We're in chapter 3 and we're talking about diversity and today's students. We're going to cover a wide variety or wide topical issue in this chapter. We're going to start off talking about cultures and assimilation into our culture in public education, as well as immersion of our disabled students, disabilities, to gifted students, all the way down to learning about we're going to learn about, just touch on two theories, two people who have contributed to the educational world, one being Glasser and the other being Gardner. So let's get busy and dive into this today. In today's public education setting, there are a lot of student diversity aspects. It could be racial, ethnic, culture, language, abilities, achievement, DSPNS, RSP, IEP are all acronyms you're going to hear when you start dealing with disabled students. You have the gifted in there that are developing at just such a faster rate. You have gender now, sexual orientation, and social economic backgrounds are all areas that you're going to have to be. All these aspects could be sitting in your classroom every day. And it actually makes it harder to teach to a student that comes from a background that's maybe didn't eat breakfast, maybe dealing with a gender issue, maybe has a learning disability, maybe he's bored because he learns so fast. A lot of you'll see in some of the videos they talk about, some of the gifted students say they hate busy work, and sometimes that's a staple of K-12 environment. Race and ethnicity is a big deal within the K-12 system that you're going to experience. There's racial similarities or differences, which is ethnicity and common cultures, and then there's the word race. On the next slide, you're going to see about a 10-minute video that you have to watch. It breaks these down. It even talks about prejudice, okay? So it gives you a real firm grasp of the difference between race and ethnicity. If you look at assimilation versus cultural pluralism, best examples I can come up with and give you, some of the book gives them too, is assimilation is basically what we did to the Native Americans. We tried to force them into our ways, the European ways of life. And then later on, we tried to break them up, and we tried to say, okay, hold on, let's give you your own space. Reservations at the time. You go out there. You don't have to be a part of us. All this doesn't bring them together. I think basically what we're trying to do is basically say we can maintain our own identities, but we need to seek a healthy relationship among the diversity groups. America's struggling with this right now. And our public schools are struggling with it as well. How to keep identity versus making all. We've read about it already that a lot of the high schools and K-12s are kind of, it's like a factory. Everybody looks the same. Everybody dresses the same. Everybody acts the same. And we try to take away. Sometimes we try to take away kids' cultural groups, their backgrounds, their heritage. But that's what makes America special, that we can work together, but we're different. I think we need to, and this is what, the multicultural education and stuff like that is, to let everybody understand their roots, let her understand where they came from, but work together at the same time. Some of the best stories growing up were from my grandfather talking about, he lived in the German part of Wisconsin, and then there was the Italian part of Wisconsin, and then there was all these subcultures, and they were broken up, just like we were talking about earlier. You go do your things and stay away from us. But he talked about how in high school, a lot of the groups came together and broke down a lot of barriers between there. He didn't have to, he always said, he goes, I didn't have to sprint through the Italian part of town anymore because I had established some friendships. And I think that's what we're trying to do with our culture and our multicultural curriculum, is to integrate cultures, but still let you know that, let the kids know their heritage, let them know their backgrounds, but they work together with other groups. Bilingual education in the state of California is huge right now. On the slide there, you're going to see four types of bilingual models, and on the next slide you're going to see a video of a new called dual immersion. I encourage you to watch it. Immersion basically is let's just throw them into English and let's rock and roll. Second is English or ESL or English as a second language programs. Basically they're short-term pullouts. They work on lessons, maybe used with the immersion student to help them get going and getting them back in there. So they'll teach them a little bit, pull them out, give them some English lessons, put them back in. Transitional basically is the combination of both languages, and then maintenance and development basically preserves and builds up their native language skills while adding English as a second language. What we're finding is that most parents would like them to learn two languages. The little big joke that goes around is that Americans are the only ones that know one language. If you look at statistics and studies, other cultures know more than one language. It helps them, helps brain function. So no matter where you're going to be faced with bilingual education models, and you need to familiarize yourself with them. If you're not already seeing them in your observation school, you will when you start your student teaching. Prior to this slide, you should have watched a video that basically has Gardner himself talking about multiple intelligence. It has, he goes over the 8 distinctive. I think they add the 9th one, basically from verbal all the way down to naturalist to kinesthetic. It's all there. This is one of your theories, and you need to start learning it and see how it might apply to your future classroom. Okay? Everybody keeps asking about the educational philosophy. Well, this is one of the first ones we're going to start talking about. Doesn't mean your whole classroom has to evolve around this, but these are ideas that are out there right now in education. The 6 principles of special ed, first off, they provide framework for what we call as the Individuals with Disability Act, Education Act, or IDEA, around which educational services are designed, and they provide our students and students with disabilities with the following. We have free, appropriate public education. We just don't say you can't come, we can't provide for you. Appropriate evaluation. We're just not going to sit them in the classroom and say, well, you know, you've got special needs, we can't help you. An IEP, which is an individual educational plan, which will be provided by the specialist on your campus. Least restrictive environment, meaning we're going to try to integrate them. We're going to, just like bilingual education, we're going to do some immersion into the regular classroom. We're not going to have 2 different classes. Parent and student participation in the decision making, that comes down to when you're working in, when your specialist on your campus is working with the IEP, and yourself will be involved in IEP. And then procedural safeguards. These are all the principles that you're going to see in your special ed at your school or your school site that you're observing. Mainstreaming and inclusion. Inclusion basically means that the disabled student does not need to be separated out, does not need to be segregated. They have the ability to do everything that a traditional student has. They just might have to do it a different way. Mainstreaming is the ability to integrate a student into the classroom, but they might need special services where they need to be pulled out, or they can't do all of the same general projects or general education projects that are going on. So sometimes they're used interchangeably, inclusion and mainstreaming, but they really are technically two different concepts. Here are some guidelines that you may or may not see in your observation class, but when you're dealing with disabled students, be open in including students with disabilities in your classroom. Don't be hesitant. Jump right in, bring them in, call them in, let them know their limitations. You need to know if they can or can't do something, but by all means, if they can do it, bring them in. Learn the method of technology that can help them. There's technologies that they can do that can overcome some of their disabilities, or at least make them compete at a similar level. It says on the slide there, I have insist that you need service to be provided. You need to be their cheerleader. If they're not getting what they need, you need to keep not being rude, but you just need to keep pushing until you feel or are satisfied that they're getting what they need. When you're a classroom teacher, when you're doing an observation, you might want to discuss with your teacher that you're observing how that method, who's responsible for their needs and services and where they are. Use a variety of teaching styles. Okay, we need to do that with all students, not just with special ed or disabled students. You need to get in the habit of using a whole bunch of teaching methods, okay? And sometimes you're going to be co-teaching with a special ed teacher in your classroom. I remember when I was even at the high school teaching math, I had a special ed education teacher in my classroom. But that teacher helped everybody in the class, not just the one student that they were there for. It makes the student feel not so, they don't stick out like a sore thumb. They don't want the teacher to sit next to them and everybody looks at them and go, how come you get an extra teacher? It was kind of a nice situation. The teacher would walk around and help, but their main objective was for that student. The gifted students, the gifted and talented students are included within your special education areas, although they do not have IEPs and some of the other things, but you are encouraged to basically give them extra enrichment, go beyond the curriculum, and to go in greater depth, develop problem solving, the acceleration into deeper, farther, progress to advanced material faster. A lot of these students, it just comes really quick and they get really bored really fast. I'm hoping you're asking the question right now, okay, I have special ed, I have bilingual students, I got culturalism, I've got GATE students. How am I going to have the time to teach? And that's some of the questions you're going to see, and you need to do this in your observation. Ask your observation teacher, how do you balance all these balls in the air? You've got everything going on at the same time, and that's what's really facing public education in America right now, is how to adapt to all these needs.